Hey guys, this is Mr. V, here to do a book review called Insomnia by Stephen King. One thing you guys should know right from the beginning is that I give a spoiler-free book review, so that's why occasionally you'll see me looking down as I just have some notes. So, Insomnia. The basic premise for this book is this guy, Ralph Roberts. He starts to get insomnia after his wife dies. And then he gets insomnia, and then it starts getting worse and worse to where he's getting almost no sleep. He's getting only 1 hour of sleep a night. He's starting to see all these strange ribbons around people. And he sees these two men in the town, he calls them the little men. And he starts to think that there's more to it than just the insomnia. And that is basically the premise for Insomnia. So, before I get into my review about it, I just want to say this is just a personal opinion of mine, but I think many people will agree that you should not read this book unless you have read at least book 3 of the Dark Tower series, as there are many aspects that relate to the Dark Tower in this book, despite it not being part of the series. There are some areas which, if you have not been reading the Dark Tower, may be a little confusing. For example, what Ka is. They use that in Insomnia, and if you don't know it from the Dark Tower, then it's like you have no idea what they're talking about until much later in the book. Whereas the people that have read the Dark Tower already know what that means, and they use stuff like that, like Ka, Ka-Tet, and there's other little things that they talk about in the book. That's why I say you should be reading up to at least book 3 in the Dark Tower. Again, personal opinion of mine. I'm sure you can still enjoy the book without, but I just think it will make it a better book. So, as for the book review, I found this a very difficult book to review, and kind of an odd book, because it's, first of all, I should mention it's very long. It's 800 pages. So it's a pretty hefty book. And the reason I find it odd, and I've seen people online talk about it as well, is that the beginning really doesn't have much direction. You get the stuff I just told you on the book jacket, and basically it's not until the 30 or even 30% mark, or even more, about a third of the way through, that you start to see more events happening and some of the main situations start happening. It's like in the beginning you're really just following his life, and I can see why people thought that's pretty boring, because I still found it somewhat amusing at times as little things happen here and there, but for the most part you're just learning who Ralph Roberts is. And it's not easy doing that for 250, 300 pages, where it's what's this whole situation? Because it really doesn't have much of a direction. And, it's it does get better. It gets better later, but you have to have a lot of patience to read this book, because, again, it's the first 250 or 300 pages, not much is happening. There's only a few little situations, and then the main situation starts to go on. So that's one area where I can see what people were talking about for that. And that's why it's a very difficult book to read and review, because it was even one of the people they talk about in the beginning was the Crimson King, and people who have read the Dark Tower know that name. I'm in the middle of reading the Dark Tower and I still know that name, but it's they mention him a little bit in the beginning, within the first, I think, 50 pages, and then all of a sudden you don't hear about him for 500-600 pages. You go almost a whole book without hearing about him, just hearing little snippets here and there, and it's just, to me, that was very odd. But I did not like that aspect. Now, one aspect that I really did not like was that he brought a pretty heavy political situation into this, a political debate into it. I do not talk politics on my YouTube channel because I don't want to. I don't feel we need to do that. But he brought a big political aspect, and I'm fine with him talking about political things, but he brought one of the most heavy-hitting ones in abortion. He brought abortion, and it was, I'd say, unnecessary. He didn't need to bring something that heavy-hitting, because I have friends that are on both sides of the abortion issue, and neither of them will budge even an inch, to where it can take away from the story, because it is such a, I could say, like, hotly debated topic. So it's like, if you're for abortion, you may like it more, you may like a character more. Whereas if you're against abortion, you may not like it as much, or you may not like a character as much. And I thought it took away a lot of the characters, because it's like, it all depends on which side you're on. That sometimes, and I've read online too, that sometimes people will be like, I didn't like character A because of the abortion issue and things like that. And that's why I felt it took away from the characters a lot. That it wasn't meant as like a great character development, but more, it was your own personal belief. And now it's like, that was not the intent. So, I thought that took away from the characters, and, I didn't like that aspect, that I didn't think he needed to bring something that heavy hitting, that he could have done some kind of other topic. And then some parts, even after the main situation gets going, like the main event, you can say, like the main situation that he's dealing with, after that starts to get covered, there are still some confusing elements, because I think that he sometimes stretched it out a little too much. But the tough part is, I just felt he threw in way too much. And what I mean by that is, many Stephen King books, if you're a Stephen King fan, or you would know this, but even if not, his books, a lot of times they make you wonder. Like, they're like, if he throws in the first situation, it makes you wonder, are they going to go do A, B, or C? And then, he makes you wonder, and he'll throw in curveballs, and, it's just great. But for this one, he just did way too many situations, to where that's why when you're like, okay, will he do A or B? But he's giving, like, there's situation 1, situation 2, situation 3, situation 4, and it's like all happening at once, to where it's like all kind of mingled in there, and it's like kind of like a web. And I'm not saying it in a good way, I'm saying it in a bad way, that there was just way too much. And that's why, like, he just threw in way too much. And because he had so many different situations going on at once, and he would, like, lead into it a bit, and, like, then you're not sure what's going to happen, and then he would do a new situation and a new one, and it's like, they just didn't link well. It's, that's my opinion. There is some situations, without giving any spoilers, that linked well, but other ones just did not. And I thought that he overdid the suspense, because many times when I'm reading a Stephen King book, like, you can tell that something at the end of a chapter, they'll say something like shocking, and it makes you want to go on to the next chapter. And then within the next like 10 pages, you'll learn a little bit, but he kind of just talks a bit more about it. For this one, it would be like, the suspense would be like adding up, and then he would throw something in shocking at the end of a chapter. And then the next chapter, instead of it being like 10 pages or doing something small, he would bring it to like 50 pages. And in my opinion, that killed a lot of the suspense and a lot of the pleasure out of, like, that, almost that suspenseful moment, like, oh yes, and then it's just like, he drags it so many more pages than it needed to be done. And that's probably a reason it was 800-page book, that it's like, generally after because you can still continue to build suspense, but he just dragged it way too long, and he overdid it. And that again, I felt that took away from the book as well. But one thing I did like is that the Dark Tower references were a lot of cool, like, were a lot of fun, and they were really cool. He had different Dark Tower references in there, and there was a humongous one at the end, which is just amazing. And it is great, and I did love the Dark Tower references, and talking about Roland, or you're kind of thinking about things to do with the Dark Tower, especially because I'm in the middle of reading the Dark Tower series, so it's like you're starting to think. But that was really cool. But as I said, this book was way too long. But I did like the Dark Tower references, and I actually enjoyed the end. I thought the end was good because I thought it had a nice end. And the last few pages, wow, those last few pages just hit me hard. Especially that last paragraph to close out the book, like that was just like it just hits you hard. And it was, I shouldn't say great, but it was a very good end, and I thought he did a nice with that paragraph. But there again, he stretched out the book too long because the epilogue, the end, and then the epilogue were just too long. He could have cut those in half and you would have gotten the same message. And, that's why, one of the things I did not like about the book was just how he could have most likely cut this book in half and been fine, been able to tell the story basically the exact same way, because he overdid so many elements. That's why I say that he could have just cut the book in half. Instead of it being 800 pages, he could have made it in 400 pages and gotten the story across, did everything properly. So that, that was a big knock against it. It's just he didn't need to go with some of that aspect. So I always rate my books on a scale of 1 to 10, with a 1 being absolutely awful, a 5 is average, and a 10 being phenomenal in terms of make that your next read. Because a 5 is average. Very few books reach the 1 category, and very few reach the 10 category. As again, 5 is average. So I would rate this book 3.5. Don't forget, a 5 is average. So I rated this actually pretty far below average. That I rate this a 3.5, I can even see dropping it down to a 3. Because, there were so many elements that he could have changed. For those of you who've seen my book review, or just those who don't, I'm a very difficult reviewer. It's hard to go up 0.5 or go down 0.5 when the 5's average. It's hard to go down a full point. But when I'm rating it a 3.5, I'm saying it's in my view that the story's not really good. That the overall novel, I should say, is not really good. Because it's not easy to get down. There's very few books that I rate that low. Very few that I would rate a 3 or 3.5. And I rated this one a 3.5. And it was just purely because I thought it was way too long. I felt he should not have did that heavy hitting of a political issue. There were parts, the beginning had like no direction for about a third of the book, and he overdid the suspense. And he still did some nice elements. I like the Dark Tower references. I like the ending was a nice end. And he did have nice storylines in between. But it was just so overdrawn, and that's why I say I'd rate it a 3.5, because this 800-page book could have been cut in half and made it 400 pages. So again, that's my rating. You guys saw. If you have any disagreements, please leave a comment below. Also, I hope you guys click the subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. This is Mr. V. Hope you guys go enjoy your reading.